now at the mercy of Justice Agri Mushelule Tribunal that is baying for her blood following Parliament's recommendation that all the 4 commissioners who broke rank with Chebukati and disowned presidential election results be kicked out of office. So when did the rain start beating Kenya's electoral body?
A declaration is hereby issued.
When the Supreme Court nullified the August 2017 presidential election, Chairman Wafula Chebukati fired Chief Executive Officer Ezra Chiloba, who was the Commission's accounting officer, as he demanded answers over what went wrong during the election.
Kwamboka Roslyn Akombe.
In October 2017, following the nullification of the August presidential poll, Commissioner Dr. Roslyn Akombe resigned while en route from Nairobi to Dubai to collect ballot papers for the repeat election. 6 months later, in April 2018, 3 commissioners, Vice Chairperson Consolata Nkadha Maina, Paul Kurgat, and Margaret Mwachanya, resigned over what they claimed to be chairman's failure to provide leadership at the commission. The electoral body needed 4 new commissioners. Incidentally, the 4 new commissioners, Juliana Cherera, Francis Wanderi, Irene Masit, and Justus Nyang'aya, who were recruited to fill the gap, also dramatically disengaged on live television as Chebukati was releasing final presidential election results at the Bomas of Kenya.
We are not at Bomas of Kenya because we cannot take ownership of the results that is going to be announced because of the opaque nature which these results have been handled.
As Parliament prepares for another grueling process of constituting the Electoral Commission, experts have described the IEBC top job as the ultimate poisoned chalice. Since the onset of multi-party elections in the country, the Electoral Commission has had 4 chairpersons: the late Justice Zacchaeus Chesoni, the late Samuel Kivuitu, Isaac Hassan, and Wafula Chebukati. At least 3 of them have left the office vilified and condemned following disputed presidential election results. In the 1992 general election, Chesoni-led team was frowned upon not only by the opposition but also the international community. All its 21 commissioners, including the chairperson Zacchaeus Chesoni, were appointees of then-President Daniel Arap Moi, yet the incumbent was contesting in the election. Moi won, and the late Kenneth Matiba filed a petition to challenge the win, which was struck out by the courts. In the 1997 general election, Moi won his last term in office, and the late Mwai Kibaki, who was then leader of official opposition, filed a petition challenging the win. The case was struck out on account that Kibaki had failed to serve then-sitting President Moi in person.
Naapa kwamba
So far, the 2002 poll is the only presidential election not to be contested. In 2005, a constitutional referendum was held and President Mwai Kibaki's Banana team was handed a resounding defeat by the orange side led by Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta and others. The Kibaki government then disregarded the 1997 IPPG deal. This saw the president single-handedly appoint new commissioners for the 2007 election without participation of the opposition, leading to a huge outcry by the opposition and civil society organizations. When presidential election results were announced, with Kibaki reportedly beating Raila Odinga by 200,000 votes, after a long wait, expectedly, the outcome was disputed. Post-election violence engulfed parts of the country. Political turmoil led to the death of at least 1,300 Kenyans during one of Kenya's darkest times. In the 2013 polls, the presidential election was disputed once again as one of the coalition's claimed rivals, Jubilee, had shared a server with IEBC. The opposition then began weekly demonstrations to have Isaac Hassan-led team kicked out of office. Hassan's team was sent packing, and his successor Wafula Wanyonyi Chebukati and his team were sworn into office in January 2017, less than 7 months to the election. Contrary to recommendations from the Kriegler report, which indicated the electoral body must be in place at least a year to an election. For Chebukati and team, it was baptism by fire when the Supreme Court nullified the August 8, 2017 presidential election. The 2022 election was equally contested, but just like in 2013, the Supreme Court was unanimous in upholding the win as announced by IEBC. Duncan Haemba, NTV.
And those reports by Sydney Chazima and Duncan Haemba inform our discussion this morning already. In studio, we have the Kibra Member of Parliament. He's also known as Mwalimu, and his name is Peter Orero. We also have Kuria Kimani, the Member of Parliament for Molo constituency. So they'll be helping us make sense of all that is IEBC as things stand. You saw that tag we used for that story by Duncan Haemba was the poisoned chalice. Is it indeed? Is IEBC indeed a poisoned chalice? Now, I did mention Mwalimu. About 1.2 million pupils who sat the 2022 Kenya Primary School Education Assessment exams will transition into junior secondary school at the end of the month. Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu has said that 13,221 public and private primary schools have been certified as compliant to host the junior secondary maiden class. Machogu has also announced that results for that assessment will be accessed via the Kenya National Examinations Council portal. NTV's Leila Mohammed with that report.
The Ministry of Education has set January 30th, 2023 as the reporting date for about 1.2 million learners who are moving into the second cadre of basic education under the new competency-based curriculum that is going into its 7th year of implementation.
Preparatories, I said, where they don't exist, sometimes we will be using the neighboring secondary school because our assessment, our research has confirmed that a number of secondary schools are also within the same compound with some primary schools, and we are also going to provide some basics.
The Ministry of Education is ready to implement junior secondary school, that is grade 7 through grade 9 in existing primary schools, a departure from a previous move to have the pupils join secondary schools that had already begun expanding their infrastructure.
But even then, you can see the kind of enrollment we also have in secondary schools, such that the kind of facility that has been put up in any secondary school will be required, taking into consideration that we have 100% transition into secondary schools as they are getting into that level.
At the moment, the country has 23,000 plus primary schools, and as at Friday, January 13th, 2023, a total of 14,589 public and private schools had been assessed. 13,221 schools had been approved to host the junior secondary school classes. The ministry will conclude its month-long assessment by the end of the week.
Kenya said yes, this is a good system. It has to undergo a little bit of review, and 82% of Kenyans said this has to be domiciled in primary schools.
With that change of plan, the government is set to inject 36,000 new teachers into the junior secondary space.
We still have a shortage, but this is a transition period where we have to do everything possible to ensure that JSS has teachers.
TSC CEO Nancy Macharia also notes that teachers with extra qualifications at the primary level will be absorbed into junior secondary.
If the average load for secondary school, since we have not changed that, as now is 27 lessons, that teacher who has been picked then will just teach the 27 lessons in the secondary school and will not now be expected to go back and teach in primary schools.
The government has already pumped in 9.6 billion shillings towards CBC transition into junior secondary school, with the ministry setting a capitation of 15,000 shillings per student.
There will be no school fees payable in any of our public schools because you know that this is the constitutional requirement.
Learners in junior secondary will be required to look different. The ministry has tasked school boards of management to engage parents and agree on new uniforms.
Uniform, as I've said, we have left the board of management.
Primary school heads have been given guidance on how to register their junior secondary students.
The ministry will use the NEMIS platform for efficient and effective management and monitoring of learners in the school system. In this regard, principals are directed not to admit students on NEMIS before they physically report to their school.
The ministry has also given guidelines on the issue of textbooks.
Some publishers may be having books which you can write on, but what we give to our schools as core books.
Before they begin grade 7, the class of 2022 will receive their performance report via the Kenya National Examinations Council portal on Tuesday, January the 17th. As the country now moves forward into the secondary section of the CBC curriculum, the Ministry of Education is now awaiting that all-important report by the Presidential Special Task Force on Education that is coming up at the end of March for them to be able to make the critical changes required to better place the curriculum going forward. Leila Mohammed, NTV, Nairobi.
All right, staying with matters education, and do note that those junior secondary school students are set to report on the 30th of January. Form 1 students, on the other hand, are expected to report to school from the 6th to the 13th of February 2023. The Ministry of Education has assured parents that the government will facilitate a smooth transition. However, Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu has decried lack of sufficient capacity in various institutions due to the high number of students, saying this will see learners placed within some county schools miss out on the schools they had initially selected. And actually that informs the story on the front page of the Daily Nation. Form 1 blues for KCPE stars and parents. We'll take a look at that in a more in-depth manner on the other side of Helen Aura's report.
The wait is finally over for over 1.2 million pupils who sat for their 2022 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education KCPE examinations, following the release of placement results by the Education Ministry. As parents gear up to take their Form 1 learners to school from the 6th up until the 13th of February, Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu has noted that 33,984 students from some 2,673 schools did not select any schools.
During the selection process, it became clear that a large number of candidates did not receive proper guidance and direction when choosing schools. This resulted in some schools attracting far many applicants against their capacities.
Additionally, some pupils may fail to be accepted to their dream schools, not because of lack of qualifications, but due to the increase in the number of pupils who applied. In Nairobi County, which has a total of 109 secondary schools and a capacity of 27,145, there were a total of 72,200 232 applications, meaning there will be a deficit of 45,087 spaces. Kilifi County has a deficit of 10,212 slots, while in Mombasa County, the deficit is 9,559 spaces. Kajiado County has 95 secondary schools with a capacity of 20,640. A total of 4,965 applicants will miss their slots, while in Turkana County, there is a deficit of 4,700 slots. Garissa County has a deficit of 2,635 slots. Kwale County has a deficit of 1,809 slots, and Taita Taveta has a deficit of 1,709 spaces. Kitui and Narok counties have deficits of 1,078 and 902 slots respectively. In the counties of Tana River, Baringo, West Pokot and Lamu, the deficit is 803, 613, 509 and 496 Form 1 slots respectively.
The above scenario can be considered an eye-opener to an underlying problem that calls for serious early redress in the work of CBC. It is against this background that I will take a personal initiative to consult with the leadership from these areas to address this perennial deficit in capacity.
The Ministry of Education has also announced that, for the first time, the ministry has placed 9,019 learners from primary schools in the refugee camps in public secondary schools, a move which is in line with the 2017 Djibouti Declaration on Regional Refugee Education that stipulates the need to enhance capacity of IGAD. Parents and guardians can text their learners' index number to 22263 to check their placement. Helen Aura, NTV.
All right, as I mentioned earlier, that informs actually the top story on the front page of the Daily Nation. It also informs the front page of the Standard, as well as, let me see, Taifa Leo. And yeah, basically all. I don't have the Star here with me. Gentlemen, might you have the Star there somewhere? Let me see. DCI officers plotted to kidnap Chebukati. All right, I will borrow one of their copies. But apart from the Star, the three other national papers are focused on education matters. Just a reminder of our topic this morning. No apologies to make. Last men standing at IEBC. Call it a day. What next? Already with us in studio are Peter Orero, who is the Member of Parliament for Kibra. I'm curious what he has to say about these top stories, given he is known as Mwalimu. We also have Kuria Kimani, who have also spied in the Daily Nation as one of those who will be championing President William Ruto's legislative agenda. He is the chair of the Finance Committee.
Yes.
All right. And we also have James Mamboleo, an advocate, because we want to know, Akili, now that given today is the last day for the three IEBC commissioners being led by Wafula Chebukati, 3 have resigned, 1 stands suspended. What is the legal position? We get into that, but first, front page of the Daily Nation, Form 1 Blues for KCPE stars and parents. The Form 1 selection results announced yesterday drew jubilation among candidates who secured their preferred schools, but sparked protests from those placed in far-flung institutions they did not choose. Some disgruntled parents vowed to take their children to these institutions, vowed not to take their children to these institutions, even as Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Mashogu said that the computerized process was guided by the principles of merit, choice, equity, and the availability of space. So this is with regard to Form 1 selection. Let's take a look at the junior secondary schools and 1.2 million candidates, junior secondary school students. 1.2 million candidates who sat their 2022 KCPE exams. Well, is this KCPE or the junior secondary school exams? Those who sat the junior secondary school exams are what? 1.2 million, I thought. Mwalimu.
2.5, that is the junior.
Same as KCPE?
No, they're different.
They're different, yeah?
They're different.
No, the numbers, in terms of the numbers.
Even the numbers are different.
Okay, well, the Daily Nation tells us 1.2 who sat their KCPE exams, 1.2 billion sat their KCPE exams in the country, and the candidates are the second last cohort under the 844 system. Primary schools that will host junior secondary schools will benefit from a 9.6 million cash injection when the Pioneer CBC class transitions to grade 7 at the end of this month, but parents will bear the cost of buying new uniforms for the learners. Another big story on the front page of the Daily Nation, Chebukati's confessions. The Electoral Agency has asked President William Ruto to order a public inquiry into the events leading to the declaration of the final results in the August 9th, 2022 presidential election. Wafula Chebukati, the outgoing IEBC chairman, also revealed that the poll witnessed the highest number of attempts to undermine the independence of the agency and usurp its powers. We get into more of that. But first, education matters from one placing painful for some, blissful for others. Interviews yesterday with some top performers indicated that most had landed top schools of their choice. Helen Aura told us those who haven't, it's on account of capacity challenges. And I see here Winnie Atieno and Esther Nyandoro tell us, is that Esther Nyandoro? Some of us are short-sighted. Yes. Grade 6 assessment results to be announced today. So it's actually also 1.25. Malimu, you are very correct. The results of the Kenya Primary School Education Assessment will be released today. A total of 1.2 million learners, 1.25. So that's 1,253,577. Will learners who sat the test in 32,555 centers across the country will know the results. Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu said marking of the grade 6 assessments has been completed. A quote here, schools will be able to access the KPSEA reports through the Kenya National Examinations Council portal from today. He assured parents that all learners will transition to junior secondary school. James, am I mistaken? Do I remember correctly when I imagine you had a child who sat for there?
Yes, he did.
He did, right? So
yes.
He's transitioning to grade 7.
No, he's going to...
Oh, he's going Form 1.
Going to Form 1.
Oh, so what do you make of this?
But I'm not taking him to a public school.
Or private.
I'll be discussing with you that later privately.
All right.
Yes.
Let's take a look at what else is on the Daily Nation. Education CS outlines plan for junior high transition. Machogu has announced a 15,000 shilling capitation per JSS Lana primary schools that will host junior secondary will benefit from a 9.6 billion cash injection when the Pioneer competency-based curriculum class transitions to grade 7 at the end of this month. Okay, no, let's stick with education matters. Let me just take a look at what I'll allow you to comment, Walimu. I'm seeing the look you're sending me. Let's take a look at the front page of the Standard and the front page of Taifa Leo. So Taifa Leo's education headline is this: wanafunzi milioni moja wapigania shule 10. Zaidi ya wanafunzi, this is what, 150 walichagua shule ya Kabianga High, huku Pangani Girls ikiteuliwa na zaidi wasichana 1,100. Nisaidie mwalimu hapa 19 shule 7 zilichaguliwa na zaidi ya wanafunzi 1,100 kila moja, ilhali zina nafasi 3,400. And there's a list of the schools here that are in high demand. I see Kabianga High School, Nayuki High School, Nyandara High School, Pangani Girls, Maseno School, Alliance Girls High School, Nakuru High School, Kapsabet Boys, Mangu High School, Butere Girls High School. Schools in high demand. And at the top here, given this is Taifa Leo, sekondari za Pwani hazitoshi, zaidi ya watoto 24,000 ukanda huo kujiunga na shule za bara. And then matokeo ya grade 6 ni leo, grade ya 7 sasa kufunguliwa Januari 30, huku serikali ikitoa masharti nafuu. I know I messed up there, but of importance is that you understood me. All right, the Standard: dream schools that top KCPE pupils will join. Those who excelled in examination have been picked to attend popular schools, but unfortunately, teachers let down 37,000 pupils who did not select any schools. Parents told not to pay fee for junior secondary. I see some of those who excelled in those exams and which high schools they've been called to on the front page there. I see they've also, like the Daily Nation, highlighted what the 3 exiting commissioners had to say yesterday. All right, I'm trying to move it so that you can see it clearer. Commissioners went into hiding after poll results. I believe it was Commissioner Gulier who said they switched off their phones or gave their phones to their PAs and went into Siberia or something. Yeah, but Wafula Chebukati said he was drinking tea at home and waiting to see if anybody will knock on his door, which nobody did. All right, so, gentlemen, I will give you an opportunity to respond to the announcements made yesterday by the Education Cabinet Secretary as regards grade 7. That is the transition of the first class, the first cohort of the junior secondary school students, as well as the letdown for some who, due to capacity challenges, will not attend the schools of their dreams, also on account of the sheer number of those who applied to some. I'll start with you, Mwalimu.
Yeah, I think it was a great moment yesterday that the parents had been waiting for a long time. You realize that initially people did not know whether the grade 6 will transit to high schools and how they will fit with the class 8, which would also join the Form 1s. So up to now, most of the parents until yesterday, they are not even known that the junior secondary has been domiciled in primary schools. I think when you looked at how the minister talked about this school, you realize that we are also in a state of a dilemma because the primary school, despite the fact that we are not going to add any facility, you realize that in terms of the classes, but the primary school do not have the labs. Most of the primary schools in this country do not have the facilities that are required to do the sciences. But we have also seen that the Ministry of Education is trying their level best. One is to give capitation to the junior secondary school. Capitation means that each student is allocated a given amount of money. That's about 15,000 per student. So I think this is a big plus to the primary schools which are going to host the junior secondary schools, because this money can eventually be used to cater for the building or putting up of the labs, or as the board may decide. But also of essence is that the grading system of the junior secondary school, or the class grade 6 transiting to grade 7, the grading is simply, they are not categorized. It's just either all of them will transit to the next level. Most people are saying that there are 3 challenges in this junior secondary school. One is about the manpower that people are talking about the teachers. And then we also have the facilities that we have in the schools. People are really talking about the facilities. Now, we look at the manpower. One thing people should realize that we have not added classes. What we have brought, or what this country has brought into play, is a different curriculum within our system. But the number of teachers remain. So in primary school, we had teachers who are taking grade class 7 and class 8. Now these teachers can eventually be used to teach grade 7, although they need to go for in-service, which the Teachers Service Commission, that is the CEO of the Teachers Service Commission, has always said that they have taken quite a number of teachers for in-service with respect to the incoming grade 7 course. And also in our primary school, almost 50% of those teachers have upgraded. You'll realize most of them are either diploma or they have acquired their degrees in various universities. So I think it is our hope that these teachers eventually will be used to take care of grade 7 for our kids. But the logistics must really be done by the Teachers Service Commission, because either some of the teachers will be moved from schools which do not have those grade 7 teachers who have acquired the university certificates or degrees and the diploma courses, or they will just use their own teachers who were there before. So what we need to do is to take most of these teachers for in-service, so that they can get the necessary skills to take care of these students.
All right.
Yeah.
A lot of money. So what I'm hearing, right, is that we need what Mwalimu said and what the Standard highlighted yesterday. You're talking about labs. That is one of the issues that was raised by the Standard newspaper yesterday. So facility, capacity, right? And then we're also looking at the human resource challenges. And we have 9.6 billion, which has been promised. Part of that being used for the 15,000, or does it total to the 15,000 capitation? That's a lot of on the plate in terms of our budget for matters education. Are there plans to ensure our pupils and students are catered for?
Thank you very much. You know, one of the underrated resources we have in this country is of our teachers, and I think we don't audit enough. We don't appreciate them enough. We don't really value them enough. The resource in our teachers, and I'm very happy that this CBC system now, they have, for the first time, gets to really fully utilize the resource we have in our teachers. You know, we have most of these primary school teachers are actually bachelor's of degree holders, you know, diploma holders, and they have, and considering that most of them are in a school setup, they have taken advantage of them being in a school setup to train, retrain, and train again, and taking advantage also of the school holidays, because you know, one of the advantages of being a teacher is that you get, most of the time you get 1 month holiday every 3 months, and they have been using this 1 month to go through the school-based programs in our colleges and universities to advance their education. So I have no doubt in my mind that we have the right resource in our teachers to take our kids through grade 7, grade 8, and grade 9. In addition, I really want to persuade the parents and the students that perhaps did not get called to the schools that they wanted to go. When I did my KCP, and one of the best students in my constituency, I didn't get to go to the school that I wanted. In fact, I ended up in a mixed day secondary school. But I still managed to get my A and go to Kenyatta University. So really, I know there's that hype in going to this school and that school, but really, what really matters is the determination of the students and the effort that they put, because we've also seen some of these students go to these top secondary schools in the country and still not excel as well in their KCSE. And also, especially through the National Government Constituency Development Fund, NGCDF, we've had a lot of us put a lot of effort in our day secondary schools. In Molo constituency, 99% of all the day secondary schools have complete and equipped science laboratories, for example. And therefore, the facilities that you find in the not so popular schools, you know, the teachers, the quality of the teachers and the quality of education is therefore more or less the same as you'll find in the big schools. So I really want to persuade the students that have not made to the schools of their choices, and the parents that probably feel frustrated that their pupils didn't get to the schools that they would have wanted their kids to go to take it cool, to appreciate that the resource in Starehe Boys in Alliance High School, in terms of the teachers, the qualification is the same as you'll find in Molo Highway Secondary School. And if then the school therefore has the facilities, for example, such as the science laboratories, then these kids have an equal chance to succeed in life as their counterparts that are going to go to the big schools.
All right. Actually, you mentioned CDF, and it's a question that was raised by the Standard as well, as to whether MPs will be using CDF to equip some of these labs, or to put them up in some cases. We take a break, but when we come back, I will give my other panelists a chance to quickly comment on this before we move on to matters IBC. But I am joined by Njeri Maina, the Kirinyaga woman rep. Good to see you this morning, and thank you for taking the time to join us. Tupatane huo upande mwingine.
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the Morning Fix this and every single Friday right here on NTV. Yes, it's about that time.
You know, the coolest thing about mornings is that a girl and two guys together in the mix, you never know what to expect. You guys are crazy.
From Friday 6, bring your good vibes, bring your picks. From 7 a.m., it's a dope mix. Every single thing on Friday changes with the Morning Fix.
Do you know why they call me Sugar? It's because I bring the flavor, the heat, the spice, and the vibes on Kenyan radio. When a song plays on my show, it moves from being a hot song to a hit to a classic. When I interview you, you become a household name. And for every brand that advertises on this show, they move from being a brand to the brand. If you want to be seen, felt, and heard, you know where to be. This is the place every Monday to Friday on 96.3 Nation FM. It's the Nation FM Drive with yours truly, Anto, Neo, Soul. So kiss, mwah! Every other frequency, goodbye, and keep it right here, 96.3 Nation FM, where good music lives.
Yo, Butruse K, the sharp god up in the mix. Now I'm saying NTV, shout out to you, bro. Keep it locked. Hey.
Sauti yako ina sound vizuri kwenye masikio.
I like it. Come to the dance floor, babe.
Angie.
Leo tuna festa pe banga. Festa pe banga. Another banga. And it's just like an amazing mix.
I am happy today. Sin koma vitu nanilea. Oh yeah. Inaweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu. Banjuka juu.
No compromise, this the hottest combo.
Unistima, uninare. Mix on NTV. Don't touch that dial. Not yet. No, what?
Is there a problem?
Nothing. Psst. What's the problem?
I said nothing.
If that's the case, then
All
let's
right.
go to sleep.
All right, I'll tell you already.
Come in. Let's talk here. Here. Come in.
Forever my love.
Tazama Q kwenye Rembo TV.
Nenda wapi?
Leave me alone.
Recharge and get upgraded.
Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Welcome back to AM Live. Mwalimu was telling me he taught at Kamkunji.
Yeah.
And then he was a deputy principal Upper Hill, a principal Langata, a principal Upper Hill. He says when Upper Hill was Upper Hill, and finished at Dagoretti last year.
Yeah.
So for some of you viewing, this was your principal, Mwalimu.
Yes.
Were you one of those management by walking around during preps?
Of course, that's a must for anything.
Wielding a huge cane.
And MP Kuria, I'm curious, what was your dream high school? You said you went to a mixed day school, but what were you aspiring? Where were you aspiring to go?
Nairobi School.
Nairobi School. Watu wa Nairobi School msijigambe sana. All right, I'm curious, Njeri, do you have anything to say about the announcements that were made yesterday by the Education Cabinet Secretary, Ezekiel Machogu, with regard to junior secondary school placements or with regard to KCPE selection? Your constituents, have they complained of anything or celebrate? What are they celebrating?
First of all, thank you for having me, Olive. It's a pleasure to be here. I feel that CBC is underfunded. It is a curriculum that is visionary, and I think we've all seen videos on social media. There was one particular one where kids were being taught swimming on, you know, on the
ground,
on the ground,
soil.
you know.
Yeah, I
so
remember that.
I feel that, of course, we have that difference between maybe perhaps the kids who go to the private schools and the ones who are in the public sector in terms of the resources that they have and how they're able to fully implement CBC. In the private sector, I presume and I believe that most of the parents perhaps have the money to pay for swimming lessons in a swimming pool, and you find that such discrepancies, when they come up, perhaps they rob the general regular child who is the majority, because most of the Kenyans are not able to afford private education. They rob them of fully benefiting from CBC. So I believe we still need to evaluate as a government and to look in future as to how we could fully fund CBC so that every child in Kenya has the equal chance to fully benefit from the same. In regard to that, I feel that the uniforms, you know, parents are grappling with, you know, the economy and basic amenities. So I feel perhaps that was a bit an extra cost on them, because at the end of the day, you have to go back to your pocket to now buy new uniform for your child. So my constituents in Kirinyaga County, and during the task force, when they were collecting the views, a lot of parents did have an issue with a new uniform, because we all know that we haven't stabilized the economy yet. The government is new. We're trying to get things in place. So that was a bit harsh on the parents. And I know most of my constituents will be grappling with that. And even when we say education is free, it really isn't completely free. You find that there are these amenities that teachers find a way to build around. Perhaps Mwalimu can tell us. They find something to build. So you find at the end of the day, that child maybe has a cost to pay that the parent did not anticipate. So we still have these things that we need to do and change, but I believe it's a learning process. But CBC is very visionary, and I know it will change this nation.
All right. James, if you don't mind my asking, and
yes.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but as a parent, you're taking the decision to take your child to a private secondary school,
yes,
as opposed to a public one.
Yes.
Why?
Because I do not like the school they wanted to admit him to, for a number of reasons, and I have decided that probably he's better off in a different school of my own choice. We have had a discussion with him, and I think he prefers that one to the school. Otherwise, the placement system would have taken him to. But of course, that is a decision that is made between the student and many parents across the country. It's not just me taking my kid to a private school. I'm sure there are a lot of many other parents who are also doing the same. In my view, the country has fared fairly well in the education sector. There are challenges, of course. We cannot take away that fact. And government is trying its level best, in my view, to try and get the education system going. But there is a sense in which we feel that the policy around the entire education system hasn't been thought out fully, because we wouldn't be expecting the knocks we are getting right now with respect to the transitioning of students from what used to be now what is now called from primary school to what is now called the junior high, and so on and so forth. I thought probably the last government would have thought out this process a bit better. And I can sympathize, I really sympathize with those in this administration who have had to take the responsibility of steering the education process, because they find themselves in a very awkward situation in which they do not necessarily have answers for some of the problems we have. So I think what needs to happen is the education sector is a multi-sectoral scenario. The chair for finance is here. His responsibility is to bake the cake. But I'm sure I am not wrong by saying that the education sector in this country takes almost probably half of the country's budget already, okay? So when you hear my colleague and woman rep for Kirinyaga saying that it is important that we fund the education sector more, she's talking about a scenario in which we are already funding a lot, we are using a lot of our budget to fund the education sector, but there is still a huge gap with respect to optimal funding for that sector to actually perform as it should. So I think this administration, from a broader policy perspective, requires, of course, to understand that their responsibility now is to ensure we grow a bigger cake, because we have this preponderance to always talk about funding, and funding is about budgets, but budgets without having baked the cake is nothing. We can speak however much we want, but if the money isn't there, there is really not much we're going to do. Schools continue to have challenges. It's not just now. Even when we went to school, schools have always had challenges of staffing of teachers. They have had challenges of physical facilities, running from latrines, toilets, classrooms, and so on and so forth. Schools don't have, in actual fact, many schools don't have optimal learning equipment in terms of laboratories and so on and so forth. Schools have a host of problems that would be dealt with by financing. I mean, CDF has come in and we have seen them do a lot of things, and those of you in Parliament, I think you probably need to persuade your colleagues, because I've seen that many parliamentarians, many National Assembly members really love to give schools buses. Because I think that is the easiest way of ensuring that the public feels that a member of Parliament is doing something. But those buses mean nothing, actually. Schools are better off hiring buses. There is no reason for a school not having classrooms, not having enough teachers, not having laboratories, but it has a school bus which the principal from time to time leases to members of the public to make some money, which we do not get account for, and so on and so forth. So CDF is a good intervention, and if it continues being there in this particular administration, I would really love that members of Parliament re-engineer or realign it to a bit more pressing issues than buses and so on and so forth. Where I come from, in Nyamira County, every member of Parliament wishes to have a bus in every school, and then at the rear of the bus you'll be see funded by and they can even have the name of the member of Parliament. It's extremely ridiculous, Olive. So the education sector, in summary, has very many challenges. Some of them are policy, and then those policy challenges, of course, have resulted in legal and administrative challenges. But together as a country, I'm sure we can make a lot of progress if all the stakeholders in the sector are coming together. And I really hope the Ministry of Education can leave its bad ways of the past and start engaging everyone, Parliament, other sectors of the executive, the public, and other stakeholders properly, so that we get a holistic solution to this problem. I love CBC. It's an extremely good curriculum, if you ask me. It engages the student, the pupil, and the parents and the teachers extremely well, right? If an optimal environment can be created around CBC, leave alone this idea of parents crying about it being heavy. Parents need to start taking charge of their children. You can't leave your children to teachers and expect them to become something in this extremely competitive world. So I think that is what my view would be primarily on that sector.
Hey, Kumbe Wakili, you are sitting on such a trove of information. When I invited you to speak, I thought maybe you'd just say no, but really yes, the important issues raised there. But and the Kenya Kwanza administration has made a lot of commitments, even as far as basic education is concerned, even with the school feeding program, doubling it, and then eventually inviting counties to match that. But if I continue with education, we may not get to IEBC. Yeah. So let me transition, if you'll allow me, unless you wanted to say something about the buses.
Wakili here, he has a privilege of choosing where to take his kids to private school or to public school. And I agree, sometimes once we go, because the NGCDF projects are a result of public participation. And most of the time, I have, even when I go to for public participation with my constituents, and I ask them, what are your priorities? Everyone shouts bus, and honestly, I have tried in my constituency to persuade them that let us take care of the more immediate needs of the school including and especially the science laboratories. And then we have agreed that once we do the lab, now we can buy the bus. And I think towards the tail end of my last term, we were able to get a bus for Elbagon DB Secondary School and for Jenga Karume Secondary School and Turi Secondary School. But before we got there, we had to agree we must have the labs first before now we get to the bus. We had other schools like Tayari and Molo High telling me they need a bus. I told them, no, I'm not going to buy a bus until we complete your science laboratories. However, the school buses have a sense of pride it gives to the students. I don't understand, but you can feel the zeal, you know, when they get a bus and it's written to the secondary school. And I think also the big boy or the students in other big schools like to intimidate them when they go to these functions like Science Congress and the debates, and then all those ones, the kids from the big school that have a bus, they all rush their bus, and then all these others now will rush their small matatu to their boda. I think they feel slightly intimidated, and that's why I think it's the dream of every student, every high school student, to have their school have a school bus, and so it is also, it's not just for political reasons. There is a way they pride in it, as in you could see the excitement, for example, when I deliver those buses and when they use their buses to go for those functions, you know. And I think it probably even gives them confidence when they are presenting their ideas, in whether it's in those science congresses or the school debates, or I think it has a way of transforming the thinking, the mindset, in addition to also providing them an easy way of exposure. Because again, one of the reasons why you'll find the big schools, let me call them the big schools, or the schools that are very high demand, is that they have continuous ways of exposing their students. Talking, for example, about them academic trips to, whether it is to the museum or to parliament or to universities and all that. Let me surprise you. One of the things that made me get a commitment that I must go to university was when I did my, during my Form 4, I qualified I was the best in Rift Valley Province in Science Congress, and went to Moi University for the National Science Congress. And that was the very first time ever in my life I stepped in a university. And I remember the four of us stayed in a hostel. We wrote, not to say that this is graffiti and I shouldn't have done that, but you all wrote in that hostel at the wall, "We will be back."
Wow.
And the four of us actually made a commitment that we made it to university. Perhaps had I not been that exposed, I would still be looking after goats and sheep in my small village of Mokinyai. So this exposure to these students actually exposes them to think beyond their villages. And I think the school buses facilitate that process, makes it a little easier to expose the students, so that their thinking, and probably those in Alliance and all the other schools that have exposure to all these places, you know, can be almost be the same.
All right, Mwalimu, because you are a principal.
Yeah, I'm lucky because I'm now on both sides of the divide. I know what happens with the schools, and also now as a policy maker. I cannot say it better than my colleague here. The schools and the kids have esteem issues.
Okay, so this, you know, he talked about this school, the money that comes from leasing these buses. Inaenda kwa mfuko ya principal?
And that is the perception from the public. Sometimes you'll just find that the community requires that bus, and the principals are encouraged very much to work with the community. Sometimes you not even charge the community around you. They will only put the fuel, because they are also in charge of the school.
The stakeholders. And
they're the biggest stakeholders of the school. And most importantly, the buses are managed by the BOM, Board of Management of the school, especially in primary. The chairman of those schools will rarely release the bus if they have not committed themselves to the school. So in very rare occasions, you will find the principal or the head teacher acting on his own behalf. But before long, I really want to congratulate some of the two principals. There are schools, we always say that the school is as good as the principal. When you look at Kabianga High School, the principal who was there, Dr. Alo, I think he transformed that school very, very much. That is now why the school has been chosen by many, many students, over 158,000 students.
Yeah, 153,074.
Then Munishi was in Nanyuki High. He realized that the last time Munishi, he used to be in Kakamega High School, then was moved to Nanyuki. Now it is 148. Unfortunately, both of them have exited from the service. So we hope that we will have even the same caliber of the principals to maintain the standards in those schools. I want to say that these buses, now when they are in school, education is an equalizer. Before, the small school would not have buses. But I appreciate that the NGCDF has brought equality and equity in all these schools. We can have a two-stream school having a bus, just like a six-stream school having a bus. These buses are used for trips. They are used for excursion. They are used to take students for educational activities. And when you cannot go to your national museum, you cannot go to geothermal, you only read them, and you cannot be there because you are a small school. When you go and ask for priority list in some of the schools, and you say, can we build you for 2 extra classrooms, or can we buy you a bus? They will all say, we want a bus.
All right.
Yes. So I think that is what is there.
I think I have a right of reply. First and foremost, I knew. First and foremost, I knew that was a hot potato, because eventually we got to balance the double coincidence of want needs between the school leadership on buses and the National Assembly Member of Parliament's quest to go back to Parliament. As I wind up on that issue so that we can move on to something else, first and foremost, Mheshimiwa here needs to send 2 gallons of paint to Moi University to go remove the graffiti that he wrote many years back. But most importantly, you see, the other Mheshimiwa here, a very good principle. You know, he said when Upper Hill was Upper Hill, he's now sitting in Parliament. He chose to go to Parliament instead of continuing the good work. That is on a light note. But however, honestly, a kid might never have come to Nairobi on a trip, but if they are exposed to the best science learning in their schools, they have laboratories, they have good teachers, they have access to water, good food, a good learning environment, I think without question, they will perform well in their examinations, and they have the rest of their life, of course, to come. I'm not saying esteem issues in schools are a small problem, but I can tell you, we got to balance between the political needs of succession into the next term of national members of parliament and the needs to, of course, properly prioritize NGCDF funds for the right things. I was saying this is a big engagement. It's not just members of parliament. Everybody has a role to play, and eventually, when we strike that nice balance, I am sure our education system will be doing very great. I think it's a very good education system. It has produced extremely very good people. I wanted to go to a national school myself. I scored 550 marks out of 700 in that old system. I expected to go to a national school because that time we had a district system. And I was number 2 in the district. I didn't get a national school. I went to a school called Cardinal Lotunga High School, Mosocho. It was a provincial school at the time. And when I came to university here at Parklands of the Faculty of Law of the University of Nairobi to do law, in my first year, I was top of my student against all these kids from national schools. And I believe, even now, I can make fairly better arguments than some of them who are still my colleagues in practice. So it doesn't mean that when you do not go to the school of your choice, that your future is not going to be any better. When I proceeded to the United Kingdom to do my master's degree, I was still top of my class from that school that I came from. And the very first time I came to Nairobi was when I came to the University of Nairobi. I'd never been to Nairobi at all in my entire life. So I think what is important is where that school I went, fortunately, had extremely excellent equipment. It has extremely good facilities. I do not know. Nowadays, it's not as good as it used to be. I don't see them performing like they used to. But probably there's also something about the students. It's not just about the principals.
All right. Yeah. So, Njeri, briefly, Wakili.
I'm very brief and concise. I'm just wondering, you know, I saw Mwalimu talking when he was saying about the money. And his demeanor, it didn't look like he was telling the truth. So he needs to come out clearly whether the money was going into where does the money go? We want to know.
Clearly, she's an advocate.
Olive, I believe it is just the law of needs and wants. Of course, maybe perhaps the kids would feel that they want a bus, but perhaps they need more basic amenities. And I believe members of parliament are very cognizant of those facts. And like my colleague, the Molo MP has said, that obviously they look at the situation and analyze it and decide whether we will give the labs first or the bus. And I believe that at the end of the day, politicians will politic. Because let us not be speaking from a point where we are devoid of looking at the facts. And the situation is that politics and public relations go hand in hand. So of course a bus would make more makelele than, you know, a lab per se. But I believe that it is in the best interest of the students. And a means of transport is security. Because if you imagine kids are going to maybe an event with motorbikes, you know, they're not secure. You don't know, even as a teacher, you're not able to, you know, pinpoint that maybe perhaps this has happened to the kid at this point. So at the end of the day, we need the buses, but of course we want the basic amenities first.
All right, so again...
let me just clear my name. I think my demeanor...
in 30 seconds
in 30
or less.
seconds. I think this one should go into record. That maybe I'm one of the few principals who never hired a bus.
At all?
At all. I believe the bus was for the students. But if the community, who are also part and parcel of those who bought the bus, wanted the bus, I would give the bus to the community. I never hired a bus as a principal.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, noted, noted. Let me move us along to the question of IEBC. No apologies to make. Jackie is my director. If you could just put up the poster from your end if you see it. No apologies to make is what, here we go. IEBC commissioners yesterday, I believe it was Abdi Guliye, said the three of them have no apologies to make. They said for the last 6 years, it was all about removing them from office, but they said there were bigger issues such as highly competitive elections and the ethnic nature of elections. Where do I start? Can I start with Mwalimu, with your permission?
Of course.
Mwalimu, no apologies to make. What did you make of that statement?
I think that was a very loaded statement, especially when we have just come from a very emotive elections, and we are trying to bridge the gap in our society where we feel that after elections we must move forward. And also in an institution there are quite a number of challenges. We are not going to say that the IEBC never did anything. There are elections which were carried out and they went on quite well and quite smoothly. And you see, IEBC must be a very independent commission. When you look at our constitution, the constitution in 2010, you look at Article, I think, 248 and 250 on how we elect and select a commission, you realize that they must be independent. And what brings this is that the sovereignty of a country depends on the power. It is about the power of the people that makes the sovereignty of a country. I think the IEBC, as much as they would say that they have no apologies, it is about the country. And when the country, sometimes a very emotive election where almost the two sides of they have almost equal electorates, I think in the future we need to have a way that the IEBC, even after conducting election, we have the country coming up together and saying that this was a well done exercise. And I believe that as a country, we know that the IEBC, mostly where the problem comes in is the presidential election. This is our country. I think because we have a presidential system of governance. I think if we had maybe a parliamentary system of governance, maybe it would be different about this election. But because we have a presidential system where the president will determine, you realize last week you saw the president in Luo Nyanza. He goes with the goodies because he's the president of the country. He is able to determine, even if we will bring it to the cabinet secretaries, he has the final authority, most likely, where this kind of development will go. So we need to relook again at our constitution, see whether it is serving the interests of this country. If we need to have amendments, because we have lawyers here, after 8 years or 10 years, we can still have amendments in our constitution. But where we need to put our eyes is the IEBC, the selection. Are they really independent? Do they have political ambition? Do they serve the interests of our political parties? This is why that the appointment of the IEBC members should go through the parliament, and their names, of course it goes through the parliament, but we really need to critically look at the people who have the interest and who do not have political affiliation to any political party. We must not have affiliation or inclination or otherwise to any political party. I think this is where we stand as a country.
All right. I suppose the question then, is it possible to get such people? But MP for Molo, do you support? They called for a public inquiry. They said this was the election where there was the most attempts at interference. Do you support the calls for a public inquiry?
Yes, you know, against all odds, and I really want to salute this great man, Chairman Chebukati, and the other commissioners who, against all odds, they refuse all the intimidation. And I think that's just part of the iceberg. It's just what they could probably say on nation media. But I think there's a lot more that went on behind the scenes. You're talking about the interference by the Security Council. You know, the alleged, you know, these DCI officers who are heavily armed, you know, wanting to go and arrest them. And against all these odds, they stood their ground and made the announcements, even when they thought that that was against what, you know, the big boys wanted. And I really like the learning curve that the IEBC has taken. In 2017, the nullification of the presidential election, you know, one thing I picked from it was that elections start and end at the polling station. And it needs to be as simple as that. That my grandmother can go and vote at Mwangi Michuki Primary School, and if she can hang around and wait for the results to be announced, then in the least she can know the performance of all the 6 candidates in that polling station. And therefore, the role of the Commission of IEBC is just to tally, you know, all these results. And you know, the tallying is not, you're not taking a calculator and adding 1 + 1 +. No, there's a whole system that, you know, that correlates all of it up, and the results are there for people to see. And if you remember, especially media houses outside Kenya, you know, were very quick to just pick on the results and actually even just declare the winner long before even the chairman of the commission really did declare the results. So I'm seeing someone who, and a commission that has learned from the mistakes that they made and now taking over from the ruling of 2017 and doing a much better election in 2022. However, I think they were still not able to convince Kenyans about the perceived impartiality of the commission. And I think one of the reasons why we had not so high turnout in the last, I think we had one of the lowest voter turnout in the last election was there are very many people who felt that their vote did not count. You know, that the deep state and the system would rig or would influence the election in a particular way. And therefore, those that wanted to vote for a particular candidate felt, why do I need to go to vote? Because after all, my candidate is going to win or without my vote. And also the other side, you know, some people felt, you know, why do I need to vote for my candidate, in this case Kenya Kwanza candidate, considering that will be rigged out by the other guys and the system. And that messaging was so clear. And I think IEBC somehow was not really able to convince Kenyans otherwise. So I'm really looking forward to the new commission, you know, learning from where the commission picked at 2022 and having an electoral body that Kenyans believe in, that believe that their votes will actually get to count. And subsequently, therefore, that people can just go and vote. And the good thing, 2022 showed us that Kenyans are willing to accept the results and move on. You know, like in the past where there were chaos, I think we have now buried that in the past. I don't think that we'll ever have post-election violence again in this country. And therefore, if they're able to convince more Kenyans to turn up and vote, therefore we're going to have a leadership that is probably more acceptable across the country, because people believe in the credible process of this election. And lastly, the cost of this election. I think we also need to have an inquiry, not really an inquiry, but a real proper audit of how much does our election cost? And do we really need to spend this money on this election? Because we ran one of the most expensive elections in the world. If we look at the cost per voter, just to go and cast those 6 ballot papers, it's one of the highest across the world. We're talking about how do we make sure that we reduce this cost? How do we make sure that our diaspora Kenyans, you know, who remit the highest source of of dollars, foreign currency to Kenya, how do we make sure that they count in the electoral process of this country? And we had, for the first time, an attempt to have the diaspora vote for the president, but it was just in a few states, and our diasporans will tell you that the way the voter registration and verification was done, it was not really friendly to them. It's like we didn't want. Some of them are saying like we didn't want them to vote. You're just making sure that there's a convenience.
Tokenistic.
It was tokenistic. So how do we really make sure that our great men and women who live and work outside the country and who really make a great contribution to the economy of Kenya actually count in a political process through their participation in the electoral process? Okay. And I'm thinking if we get around this, and I really want to persuade my political class that when replacing and the recruitment of these IEBC commissioners, let us take away our interests completely. Let us have as neutral Kenyans run this electoral body as possible. And I'm sure there are very many competent, hard-working Kenyans out there who would be acceptable across the political divide. Let's have them run this commission, and let's make it as independent can be, as our drafters of our constitution intended to be.
All right, we need to take a break, but when we come back, we'll hear from the advocates in the room, James Mamboleo, as well as Njeri Maina. She's an advocate in addition to being the woman rep for Kirinyaga County. Do we have an IEBC as of tomorrow? That is the question. And also, you raised the question of merit in terms of those who take up those positions. Commissioner Molu warned against political stooges. Do we need perhaps to rethink the selection of commissioners on the other side of this break?
Who said January has to be in January? NTV is about to make this season easier for you and your pocket. Yes, then January Bonanza is here. We are offering you great shopping deals, big discounts, and back-to-school offers. Just walk over to the National Archives from the 19th to the 21st of January and enjoy crazy January offers all day. MTV Entertainment is gonna be rocking the stage as you get to shop and buy from the biggest shopping deals ever. It's a January bonanza for you and your pocket.
Over the course of a long season, even the best teams are not going to always perform at their peak. Therefore, it is necessary to find ways to win on the down days. It is a trait the current Barcelona lineup realizes and is capable of. Manager Xavi Hernandez getting his men to understand the importance of winning ugly. Which was essentially the case as Barcelona beat Atletico Madrid last weekend. Ousmane Dembele's first-half goal and some resolute defending securing the win and top spot on La Liga table. Recharge and get upgraded to make memories with your loved ones this new year. Anytime, anywhere. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
My name is Michael Olunga. Watch Sport On every Monday, 10 p.m. on NTV.
This is the baobab seed powder, a product of the baobab fruit, a source rich in vitamins and a popular native snack across sub-Saharan Africa. I'm here at the Kenyan coast where a foreign international has been on the spotlight for accusations of biopiracy relating to the harvesting for export of baobab trees. I'm here to find out what is at stake. I do a lot of intricate work because my background is henna painting, but then later I decided to take those designs onto other mediums like wood and glass, ceramics.
tuko pamoja, maishani tuinuane.
All right, we're back on AM Live. We are interrogating the status of IEBC. Wakili James Mamboleo, will we have an IEBC as of tomorrow?
I am one of those people who have spent a lot of time on these televisions speaking about IEBC. From a political, economic, or legal perspective, we've discussed these things, but we will keep saying them. And one of the most important things we need to say is this, that every time you have an election in a democracy or in an environment that is supposed to be a democracy, after the election, there are those who will feel like the country has moved forward, and there are those who will feel like the country has made steps backwards. There are those who will not be happy with the results, and there are those who will be extremely elated with the result they get. That is the nature of democracy. Now, the building of a nation founded on democracy, and especially constitutional democracy, is a work in progress. You can never say at any point that we have arrived at the peak of our democracy. That would be a lie. And fortunately or unfortunately, the people who give birth to either a good democracy or a bad democracy are the entire multi-sectoral players in the political system. Politicians, the midwife in this case, for instance, for our case, IEBC, the voters, and so on and so forth, and the other institutions, either in the private sector or in government. For instance, I can give you a simple example that churches have now become a very important pillar, either against or for democracy. Okay? So having said that, this is what I will say with respect to the big question you asked, whether what is going on around now with respect to the IEBC will take this way or that form, and so on and so forth. This is what my view is, that you see, from 1992, except 2002, almost every presidential election has been highly contested. It even goes to court. It went to court in 1992, it went to court in 97, 2002 it didn't go to court, went to court in 2007, went to court in, no, in 2007 people refused to go to court, and you saw what happened. In 2013 it was in court, in 2017 it was in court, and I do agree with my colleagues here that this journey has given us very good exposure and learning and experience about how we should handle or we should not handle our elections. However, this constitution, this social construct that we have given ourselves, did not intend anyone to become a power unto themselves and to hold the country hostage for whatever reason because of the power they hold. I must say that the IEBC has done extremely well considering previous experiences in terms of running elections. But in this last election, there was a total breakdown in the corporate IEBC. And the question as to exactly what went wrong and who was to blame is still out there, as Americans would put it. There is a preponderance that once you take a side like we saw in the IEBC and your side wins, that we are happy to pat ourselves in the back and say, you're the one who did well. That we might never know. What I know for sure is that that constitutional commission called IEBC must start learning to work as a corporate body. And we did not see that at all in the last election. In fact, one of the biggest issues that went to the Supreme Court for determination was the question of interpretation of Article 138(3)(c), which asks the question, who in the commission should tally, verify, and announce results? Is it the commission or is it the chairman of the commission? Okay? And the court found that the chairman of the commission seemed to have sidelined the rest of the commissioners from the process of tallying and verification of results. That is on the court record. It's in the judgment. It's not my words. But however, the court said that nonetheless, this does not form a good basis for nullifying an election, because it doesn't show, the evidence produced in court did not show how that generally affected the result. Okay? Now, I come from the school of thought that in spite of the poise that the chairman and some commissioners have taken, I wouldn't be so quick to salute them with greatness like some people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think them, the 3 and the 4, still owe Kenyans a huge explanation as to how the IEBC got to that point, as a result of which it will forever remain that 4 commissioners were against the result and 3 commissioners were for it. Now, this is what I would say. Once that declaration has been made and it has gone to the courts and courts have validated it, now this is the point of my departure from some of my friends out there. Once that has happened, in my view, because I believe in processes, now I accept that that process has gone back, and now as a country we should move forward. We should now dedicate our time and resources in creating the IEBC that my colleague to the right was suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
An IEBC that is devoid of partisan political interest.
Okay.
Well, that is easier said than done. And the question I will ask, for all honesty, is we're just about to elect new commissioners. The question is this: do you think, Olive, that in this coming process of getting commissioners, do you think that His Excellency the President William Ruto will not have an interest in it? Do you think that the leaders of the opposition will keep quiet and wait until that process is done? If your answer is yes, that the Kenya Kwanza administration will keep totally out of it, they will not bother, they will just wait for the selection panel to give them whoever commissioners they give them, then I can tell you for sure we have arrived. But my crystal ball tells me one of the biggest fights we are going to have in the next few days is who sits in the selection panel to select IEBC commissioners, and then most importantly, what does that selection panel produce in terms of members of a commission? And from what we have learned, for instance, the chairman of the IEBC has a lot of power.
All right.
What if he was wrong? You know, what if he was wrong?
What
So
if
we
he was
should
wrong?
deal. So
Okay.
that inquiry he's talking about, that inquiry he was talking about, in my view, should also deal with the question: who is it that is likely to hold the country hostage? Should he be wrong and is insisting he wants to do it that way?
All right. Jerry.
I think Olive, perhaps my colleague here, and I'm glad he went to the University of Nairobi, at the same campus that I went to study law. And we have to look at facts as they are. And it was not a matter of right or wrong in regard to the commissioners during the election. And it was purely a matter of announcing the results as they were. And Olive, I sit in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, whose matters I really can't discuss in detail, but I can make fair commentary on it. And I was alive to the petitions that were presented against the commissioners. And when you look at the facts and the chronology of events, and I believe Wakili here knows that in law we deal with evidence. And at the end of the day, we cannot say that Chebukati, because of deciding to announce the results as they were, went against the other commissioners. That is the work that they were all supposed to be doing. Just because there were competing interests and some people felt that perhaps the results were not supposed to be announced as they were, does not mean that he was wrong. And at the end of the day, we can never have total independence of any institution. That is delusional. All these institutions work together. It's like a jigsaw, right? Every piece of the puzzle has to fit. Because at the end of the day, the government, who perhaps is the executive, funds these institutions. And like he has said, we cannot sit here and lie to the public that perhaps maybe the opposition or the government as is will not have any interest in the selection panel. This is about the democracy of our nation. It's about the future of our nation. Of course, a well-intentioned president would want to ensure that there is a team that will secure the future of this nation. So at the end of the day, Olive, we need to be realists when we look at these things, but not just sit on the sidelines and think, oh, even the opposition will not be pushing for perhaps free and fair elections in 2027. And Olive, like my colleague said, elections begin and end at the tallying station, the polling station, sorry. I remember when I was vying during the nominations, you know, I was just a newbie, it was my first time. So my agents disappeared from the polling stations to celebrate, because I think we had around 30% announcements, and I was just raking in the numbers. And Olive, it just went blank, and now I was losing. And you know, elections is about, because it wasn't really hotly contested per se, it's about a pattern. So the pattern was that I was leading, and now I was losing. My agents are nowhere to be seen. We go to the main polling center, and we find that maybe in the constituency, they're not signed. You know, the forms are not signed. So I cannot even authenticate whether those are the numbers that I got at a certain polling station. And we know that the opposition, they have even admitted that they failed to field agents at various polling centers. So we cannot keep on having this blame game and saying that it is the IBC all the time. We have had the IBC amended a record, I think 5 times, you know, within a short period from 2011, 2016, 2019, 2020. We've now done another amendment. And at the end of the day, we can't keep saying it's the system, it's the system. Then it must be us, because we're the people who are running the system. We're the people who are making these laws. We're the people who are running the policy changes. Like Wakili here, he's an advocate. He has a right to go to court. We had a petition, I think petition number E364 of 2020. And the last amendments that were done to balance the selection panel were actually emanating from the courts. They were not, it is not even Parliament or this government that pushed for those amendments. And it was an issue of a balance of separation of powers, because they felt that in the previous, the law as it was, that it gave the Parliamentary Service Commission more power, because it gave us, I think, 4 selection slots in regard to perhaps distributing the power at the end of the day. Like we've said, interest will always be there. This is politics. It can never be devoid of interest.
All right.
But what is that interest being channeled to? Is it in the right direction? Do the people who are behind the scenes have the right intention for this nation?
All right. Peter, Mwalimu.
Yes.
Some of what was said yesterday by Chebukati and his team is that IBC always ends up taking the blame, but they say the problem is the competitive nature of Kenyan politics and the ethnic nature of Kenyan politics. And Waiguru, the governor, who is now the chief of COG chair, talked about how come people don't have problems with these other 5. They always have a problem with this one. And part of what Chebukati also said is that the commission has been set up to fail by legislators. In fact, with regard to, first of all, amendments to the election laws being late. And then he also talked about not having funding throughout because I remember the EU commissioner was talking about this is the first commission that has served the full 6 years under the new constitutional dispensation. So did they have a case? Do walikuwa na machungu wakiongea? Because I remember Gulie talking about, oh, you know, first there was, what was it? He talked about clean slate under BBI, and before that, I can't remember what it was called. And he said it's always under the 6 years, for the 6 years. Actually, it was Molu and Gulie who said there's always been the threat of removal from office hanging on their head. So do you agree? Is the problem the commission, or is the problem the competitive nature and ethnic nature of our politics?
Just as you say, I think it's both commission and the competitiveness of nature of our politics in this country. But I just want to say something about what my colleague has said. You know, when we came here, we did come as opposition, the leader. What we are saying is that the work of the commission is to give transparent and verifiable election, whether we have agents or no agents. It is the duty of the commission to ensure that the elections are free and fair. So what I can say is that this election is a political process because they are involved in politics. If you do not have a thick skin, then please don't apply to be a commissioner because it is a political process. For those who do not know, maybe I jog their minds back. In 2002, we did not have a problem because there was a landslide victory. The Kenyans were tired about the tyranny of the previous regime. When we came to 2007, when the competition was so close, if I jog my mind, it was even worse than last year. If you remember, if you were there really,
yes,
you remember that the president was sworn in at night in State House.
Yes.
And not only that, when we were at KICC, because I was there, when we were at KICC at night, the lights went off. The security apparatus, the GSU filled the KICC. And it was terrible. So what I also want to say is that even a commission of inquiry about the past election might really not help this country. Because even all those years, we have had very competitive elections.
So what will help this country?
What will help this country is that we have, of course, now we can see that we have a mature democracy. One of my colleagues just said that this time we did not have any fights after the election. I think that's a big step for this country, that we are maturing and we are really depending on the announcement of the IEBC. We need to have a process. Of course, it will not be devoid of political inclination, but we need to have a process that is really transparent. We need to have all those with political interests put their interests aside and let us get people of high integrity, people who will deliver us from this bondage of really, not really just political competitiveness, but expectations of Kenyans must be met by a simple process that is put by the IEBC. We must educate our people about elections. The IEBC this time never educated our people about elections. That is why we did not have the numbers during the voting system. People were not educated about this election. We need to have timelines, proper timelines. We need to have funding that are allocated to IEBC from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. We must not use this as a bait for the IEBC that they lack funds to operationalize their things. We need to have a system, even if it is a presidential system. We need to have a budget. In fact, I have my person here for the cake. Let them make the cake for this IEBC and let them budget for the IEBC so that they don't rely entirely on the executive to carry out their function.
Actually, yes, because Chebukati talked about an IEBC fund.
Yeah, yes. Let us have them operate as independent as possible. Just as we give allocation, now we are talking about education, they have almost half of the budget, maybe 40% of the budget. If we decide that IEBC is going to be 35 billion, we are operating the biggest budget almost in the world about elections of this country. Let us give them that budget so that they don't wait for anybody or any influence from any corner of the political divide.
Okay.
So I think that our competitiveness also and also the operations of the IEBC will really determine and will really control the emotiveness of these elections.
Okay.
And I think it is high time that the IEBC is as independent as possible. Let us not throw blame games about the parliamentarian or the legislation. Let us give IEBC their operational jurisdictions, the framework that they require to bring a very independent election results, and let's not have blame game after that.
All right. MP for Molo, you supported actually what the exiting commissioner's calls for not installing political stooges. What do you say to those who say, let us be open about it, let there not be any opaqueness, and they're proposing we go IPPG?
You know, irrespective of which method we go in the selection of the commissioners, you know, what really matters is the objectiveness of the arriving at that decision. whether we go through the political liaison committee or we go through the process as proposed by the IBC amendment bill by the leader of majority, whichever way we go, what matters is, are we going to objectively look for independent, competent commissioners?
And again,
really,
is it possible to get independent commissioners?
It is possible. And what Waiguru said about the other commissions, about the acceptance of Kenyans on the work of other commissions, talking about, for example, judges, talk about the judges in the Supreme Court, talk about, all these people at the decision-making helm that make, quote-unquote, independent decisions, as in, it is actually possible to get those people. I believe it's actually possible to get those people. And I'm speaking, and again, I'm speaking this to both the political divide. We have had the advantage. In 2017, I was elected on Jubilee. And there are very many decisions that we made, and I made. There are particular bills and legal amendments that I made in the hope that they were going to benefit my party, my political party then, and my political inclination then. A few years later, the decisions that we made came to haunt us. Because now, when Jubilee was invaded by our Azimio brothers and sisters, and then we became outsiders in our own party, we found that the decisions that we had made in our political party came to haunt us. And the other people now, the decisions that they also made have also come to haunt them. Now, the us that were outside now have come back to power. So this is why I'm really persuading my brothers across the political divide. We don't know how things will go tomorrow. Against all odds, it is President True to the president. It could have gone whichever way. Remember, even the difference in number of votes was, like 200,000 votes, which were it not for the last-minute campaigns and the flipping of the likes of Moses Wetangula to our political side, who was on the other side, it means it could have easily gone whichever way. So let us make laws, let us make decisions for prosperity of this nation. And I've issued a public apology before, and I want to apologize again. I made decisions that I thought were going to persuade my political wing then, only for those decisions that I made to come and haunt me when a change comes. So I want to be committed in making sure that the decisions that I made are not for my current political persuasion, but for the prosperity of this nation. Because if I do that, then I can be assured, irrespective of whichever way an electoral process goes, then I am safe, my family will be safe, my generation is going to be safe, and Kenya is going to be safe. So if I would persuade other people, and especially us at the decision-making table, that we became that objective and made laws for prosperity, made decisions for prosperity, not because of the current situation or not because they perceive to advantage us today. The decisions that we make to advantage us today could easily disadvantage us tomorrow. And case in point is the last electoral cycle.
All right. James, are we daydreaming when we are thinking about this public inquiry? Do politicians have any interest in a transparent process?
I am extremely impressed by the sentiments of this Molo MP.
Yeah, it's not every day you hear politicians issuing a public apology.
I really hope we can get this kind of members in that August House, in both Senate and in the National Assembly. And if you continue like this, my brother, I can assure you, one of these fine days, probably your name will be etched very close to great people like Abraham Lincoln and so on and so forth. It's amazing to hear a member of parliament speak like that. Olive, somebody has said before that you can never really determine the intentions of a human being. You can never know for sure that what they are saying is what they mean. And you can never tell, for instance, that the members that we appoint to the next IEBC will be men and women with this kind of vision, people who intend well for the greater good of this country. But we really hope, and we must never give up trying to get those people, But the process is as good as the result. How objective we go into the selection process, what kind of parameters we use to select those people, to a very large extent will determine what kind of people we get. And as he has said, the biggest mistake you can make is to legislate for self. Because as they have said many times before, make laws in such a way that when your opponent is in power, they will not come to haunt you. Because what happens most of the time is, and I agree with him, that the Jubilee administration that he was a part of, in the last 10 years or so, really made a certain legislation to serve the moment at the time, you know, which has, of course, come to haunt them. And I am sure the Azimio coalition also, one of these fine days, is going to find time and go on a retreat and ask themselves very pertinent questions. And one of the first questions would be, what did we do? What happened, right? So this is what I think is important, that, you know, we have litigated on IEBC issues for the last 10 years. Every month there is a new case coming up with respect to the IEBC, one way or the other. We have amended the election laws. I was the rapporteur representing the Jubilee coalition in 2016 when we amended the entire electoral process, okay, in the Kiraitu Orengo-led committee, okay, which resulted in very serious amendments to the election laws, and introduced, at that point we felt strongly that if we introduced technology in the elections, we would really help. But then we have come to realize later that the technology is as good as the user, okay? Even if you have all the technology, and then you have a human being behind it who decides to make it fail, it will fail, okay? If he wants to make it work, it will work, and so on and so forth. So this is something I need Kenyans to understand, and I borrow it from, or I am motivated by the words I've heard from this member of parliament, that, look, Kenyans are more than 50 million right now. We have an adult population probably of about 30 million. These are tentative figures.
You're extrapolating.
In the last election, we registered 21 million voters. So 30 million people automatically weren't going to participate in the election in terms of voting. But out of the 21 million we registered, only 14 million turned out to vote. Out of 50 million plus Kenyans, that tells you we are already dealing with 35 million or thereabouts of Kenyans did not intend to participate in this election, okay? So now, out of the 14 million, the current president and the current leader of the opposition almost split the vote to get 7 million and one slightly under 7 million. So which means, as an administration, my friends, the current UDA administration, or Kenya Kwanza administration, got 7 million out of 50 million Kenyans. And so where are the rest of these people? So the important question, or the important lesson there for me is this, that probably you don't know what would have happened had Kenyans all these Kenyans fully participated in the election. And so now that His Excellency William Ruto is the president, and I've seen him start making extremely beautiful moves for this past week, he's been going to places that otherwise he wouldn't be going to. I think he needs to persuade these other Kenyans that, you know, now I'm a president for all of you, and I intend well to each and every one of you. Someone must get elected, definitely, and I'm the one who got elected through the process that we had. And so come we work together as Kenyans and move the country forward.
Okay.
This apathy that you are seeing from Kenyans about election might not be so much a question of what we are discussing here. It might be complete disgust at the fact that this election means nothing. Either that even if you get elected as a new government, you are not going to change anything, so I don't care, or even if I go to vote, it will mean nothing because my vote won't count, you know? Okay. So it's important, as we do some of these inquiries, to also feel the country and ask ourselves, really, why does a country of 50 million plus Kenyans participate so poorly in the election? This is a country that has come from, Kenyans are really excited generally about politics. So how come that in this particular time they did not get into it? So I think as we get into appointing new IEBC commissioners, let even those people who offer themselves for these jobs, to begin with, we have seen they are not very good jobs. They end careers, you know. When you ask for that job, please be a man or woman of integrity who requires to make this country move forward. Because IEBC has a lot of power, a lot of constitutional power, because ultimately it is the one that decides after the elections have been done. And you know, Maina Kiai case made sure that we understand that the election is done in the polling station. However, for presidential elections, they must be brought to the National Tallying Center. And there are people who have very big issues about the entire process of bringing those votes to the National Tallying Center. Okay? It is not like a member of parliament's votes which will end at the polling station, you know, and the returning officer will announce them. And here, a process has to be found to bring all those votes from the country to Bomas, okay? And there are people who have an issue with that. So, in my view, to finish on that issue, I think to run away from the fact that this is political process is going to be a problem, because politicians will always have an interest in it. Okay. They will deal with it below the table, okay? And they'll be saying over the table that they don't want to be interested in it. So why don't we straight away make it a political process? This is IEBC we are forming. Who are the big political players? Bring your people, I bring mine. And I think once that happens, those people who are brought, it doesn't mean that they are going to only serve political, they are going to serve political party interests, but you will know from the very beginning that my interest is taken care of. So you are not going to be saying that, you know, William has now, the president has now placed in office all his people. Now me, I'm not going to participate in the election. You know?
Jerry, I'd like you to conclude the conversation for us. I'm seeing time has run. Yeah, so, and also, as you respond to your last comment, something Chebukati raised yesterday was there needs to, the legislature needs to look at a balance between freedom of speech and disinformation and misinformation around elections.
Olive, first of all, I want to say Mwalimu and I are disappointed in my colleague. He's spoken very highly of Kuria. And you know, there is no mention of us. So we must be the low of the really terrible politicians. I am so lucky that Kuria has taken it upon himself to mentor me as, because I'm a new member. And I believe I will follow in the steps. So I'm in the right direction under his guidance. And Olive, I want to pinpoint to my colleague that all elections are tallied at the polling station. So even the presidential election, all votes are tallied, they're announced, the agents verify and sign. So even if there is the issue of transporting the same, because we are, even our own votes and the forms that are filled have to be ferried to the final tallying center. So at the end of the day, it is not an issue of that. And we can go on and on about it. We have to admit now that even if we're blaming the system, it is the people behind the system. And you've asked a very pertinent question about what the chair, now the former chairperson raised yesterday. And I believe that even as the legislative arm of government, perhaps we have failed by IEBC. And I want to admit that because he requested that any amendments be done at least 6 months to the general election. And you find that there's all this contention around elections. And I remember there was even a matter that we took to court. Some advocates took to court, because I'm a lawyer besides being a politician, that we took to court in regard to the election. So you find that they ambush the electoral body, and they find themselves in a tight spot in regard to how they're supposed to deliver to Kenyans. And Olive, I believe the president is very keen on unifying this nation, and that is something we must commend him for. And we have seen people say, oh, he's not going to this particular region, yet they heavily voted for him. He is a president for all Kenyans, and he has made it very clear. And it does not mean that because he's going to a certain region first, he's trying to, you know, destabilize or maybe perhaps create antagonism between, you know, the areas that really voted for him and Mase. That is not his intention at all. He's keen to deliver to all Kenyans, and I believe for the first time we have a very well-intentioned president. We will be the ones to fail him if we don't support him fully so that he can deliver to Kenyans as he promised. Okay. And Olive, in regard to the freedom of information, there had been a matter that I think went up to the Court of Appeal, if I'm right, and you find that we really need to regulate social media.
Okay.
And that is a point where Kenyans have come where you're just tweeting, you know, you're just a click away from tweeting. Perhaps I don't even know you, Olive, but I just see something you've said and I'm there, you know. releasing all my vitriol on you and saying all these things. Okay. And perhaps some of that information is not correct. So we have to strike a balance between the freedom of speech and misinformation so that everyone can be responsible for what they say.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. She saw the cues I was sending her. Non-verbal ones. Gentleman, lady, we have Jerry Maina in studio, Kirinyaga Woman Representative, James Mamboleo, activist, advocate. We also have the Member of Parliament for Molo, that is Kimani Kuria, as well as Mwalimu Peter Orero, who is the Member of Parliament for Kibra. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me on AM Live this morning. I know we only touched the tip of the iceberg. I will plead with them to come back sometime in the coming few weeks. Enjoy your morning.
We have not said hi to Constitution.
Oh yes, you know we have to.
You're throwing money down the drain.
How?
On these cleaning products.
Impossible.
Harpic 10X. While other cleaners flow away, Harpic 10X's viscous formula in only one round of application gives you sparkling, clean toilet. Harpic, 10 times better cleaning than other cleaning products.
And great savings too.
What I'm about to do, I'm sure nobody expected.
I want to give them an experience that they will never forget. Every performer has 40 hours of rehearsal booked.
With a band.
Yeah.
I mean, niko worried. Siwezi taka kama ile kitu kama fire.